So good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. This is our final class of this module. Oops, sorry, made a boo-boo there. And we'll begin, as we usually do, with some prayers. Then I'll lead a little meditation. And while we're reciting the prayers, if you wish, if you can, imagine the Buddha in the space in front of you, made of light, beautiful, radiant, blissful, emanating all his wonderful qualities, pure love and compassion for every living being, no anger, aversion, judgmentalness, rejection towards anyone, is totally open to and concerned about every living being, and dedicated to helping each one of us until we reach the same state that he has reached, enlightenment. So see if you can feel that the Buddha is someone you can rely on for your needs, for this present life and all future lives as well, up to enlightenment. And also do your best to have the attitude of compassion and love and altruism, thinking that you're here participating in this class, not just for your own benefit, for the benefit of others as well. As many other people and beings as you're able to open your heart to. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. So then let's recite the mantra of the Buddha a few times while imagining light flowing from the Buddha into you. So imagine this light coming in, filling your body completely, purifying all negative karma, all delusions, obscurations, so all the negative things inside of you that are the cause of suffering and problems. And it nourishes your positive potential to have the same qualities that the Buddha has. So we do already have many of those qualities, like compassion and love and wisdom. They just need to be increased, developed more and more. So imagine the light from the Buddha helping to increase those qualities, so you become more like the Buddha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Taya ta om mune mune maha munaye soha. Okay, so take a few moments to check your body. Try to be in a comfortable position with your back straight. But at the same time, be as relaxed as possible. So if there is tension anywhere in your body, see if you can let go of the tension. Imagine that it melts, flows out of you and vanishes in the earth below. So your body becomes light, relaxed, and free of tension. Let your breathing be natural, steady rhythm. And let your mind settle down in case there's any thoughts running around in your mind about the past, the future, other places, anything other than what we're doing right here, right now. Put those other thoughts aside. You can always pick them up again later. But for now, just let your mind be in the present moment, present place, wherever you are, focused on what we're doing here so that you can get the most out of it. So let's do a little bit of contemplation on something that we looked at last week, the 6 causes of delusions. These are different factors that are responsible for delusions like anger and attachment coming up in our mind, even though we don't want them to be there, but we find them just coming up on their own. So the first factor is the seeds of delusion. So we have these in our mind, and they're carried from our past lives. So we had past lives before this one, and we often experience delusions like anger, attachment, jealousy, and so on. And those experiences left imprints or seeds in our mind for those same delusions to arise again. So kind of like a habit. So we came into this life already with a habit to get angry, have desire, attachment, get jealous, and so on. And then when we meet objects, like things that we see, they could be people or animals or other objects, sounds that we hear, and so on. So when our mind perceives objects, then the objects become like a trigger for the delusions to rise, kind of like pouring water on the seeds so that they ripen and sprout and produce those delusions. And then the third factor is society, which means that we are influenced by people we spend time with, family, friends, co-workers, and so on. So if any of those people have the habit of getting angry, or if they have a lot of attachment, desire, then when we're with them, that will influence us, make it easier for us to experience those delusions as well. Because we're easily influenced by other people we spend time with. Let's see if that's true in your experience. And the fourth factor is familiarity. Information. Okay, so this is something else that influences us. Information can come in different ways. Reading, watching TV or movies, surfing the internet, social media, and so on. So lots of sources of information coming in. And some of that information can increase our delusions, like our anger or attachment. And sometimes the people producing that information do it deliberately, like they want us to buy certain products, or they want us to go to certain websites. So they're very clever. They know how to trigger our desire, our attachment, or our anger, so that we'll pay more attention to what they're trying to say to us. So again, see if you can notice that in your experience, that the information you take in different ways can also influence the arisal of delusions in your mind. And then the fifth factor is familiarity or habit. And so, for example, we repeatedly get angry or get attached, then this will make it more likely to have those delusions again and again in the future. It's like being addicted. So the way our mind works, the kind of emotions that come up in our mind are the ones we're most familiar with, most habituated to. And the practice of meditation directly counteracts this, because when we practice meditation, we put our minds into positive states like concentration, loving kindness, compassion, contentment. So we try to generate those states of mind and then stay in those states of mind as long as we can, even just a few minutes. That way we're building up positive habits. We're making our mind familiar with positive, constructive, beneficial states of mind. And the more we do that, then the more those will become habitual and will be less habituated to the negative ones. Then the sixth and last of these factors is unrealistic thinking. So when we have attachment or anger or any other delusion regarding a certain object, like a person, then our mind kind of gets obsessed and keeps thinking about that person again and again, and inventing stories, fantasies, having imaginary confrontations or conversations, and usually exaggerating. We exaggerate the good qualities of objects we're attached to, and we exaggerate the bad qualities of those that we don't like, that we have aversion to. So we come to see those objects in a really distorted way, not at all like reality. So if any of these factors sounds familiar, if you can recognize them in your life, your mind, your experience, then see if you can develop the determination to pay more attention to them and work on them so that your mind will be less likely to get caught up in delusions. Okay, so for this class, our last class, we're going to look at the 12 links of dependent arising, and then we'll look at the last two truths, true cessations and true paths. So hopefully there'll be some time at the end for you to ask questions, but you can also do that. We'll have a practice day on May the 18th that will involve some guided meditations, but also some Q&A, so you can have another chance to ask questions. So if we could have the file up on the screen. So this topic of the 12 links is another way of explaining the causes of suffering, which is the second of the Four Noble Truths, the causes of suffering. And this is a difficult topic. The monks and nuns and other students who study in monastic colleges, they spend a lot of time studying this topic using philosophical texts from India and from Tibet. So to really understand the 12 links does take quite a bit of time and also effort to study them. But I thought we'll just take a quick peek at them, a sneak peek at them. And then later at the end, there's some other resources, some other books that if you want to know more about the 12 links, then you can read more about it then. So these are called the 12 links of dependent origination, or sometimes called dependent arising. So that's a phrase that you encounter quite a bit in Buddhism. And basically it just means that things are dependent. So according to Buddhism, everything is dependent on other things for its existence. Nothing is independent, standalone, all by itself, separate and autonomous. And so that's just the general meaning of dependent origination. Then the 12 links of dependent origination, this was a teaching given by the Buddha, and he taught it quite a few times. And it's an explanation of how it is that we keep circling in samsara. We keep dying and then taking rebirth again and again and again, even though it's very unsatisfying. There's lots of suffering, lots of unsatisfactory experiences, but we're stuck. We're stuck in this situation. So these factors explain why and how we are stuck in samsara. And so the Buddha taught these 12, and then they're in the scriptures. And it seems that over the time, like many centuries since the Buddha lived, various masters have given interpretations, different explanations, interpretations of the 12 links. So if you study these from different teachers and different traditions, you might find there are differences the way they're explained. So this is one explanation, but don't hold on to it too tightly. This is our tradition, but just be aware that there are other traditions. And also what I'm presenting here is just a simplified explanation, very simple, without all the nitty-gritty details, just to help you have some idea what these are all about. So the first link, I don't know what happened to the numbers. I had these numbered when I wrote it, and they've disappeared. Now there's just bullet points. But anyway, we'll try to do with that. So the first one is ignorance. And as I mentioned before, there are different kinds of ignorance. The word ignorance can mean different things. But here, when talking about the 12 links, It's the ignorance that grasps at the I. That means our own I, our own self, I, me, grasping it to be inherently existent. And that's not true. There's actually no such thing as an inherently existing I. That's just like a fantasy, a creation of the mind, not existent at all. But we have this ignorance in our mind from beginningless time that grasps at an inherently existing I. That's the kind of ignorance that's meant here. And and this ignorance motivates us to commit an action, to do some kind of karmic action. And so that's the second link. Link number 2 is the term is compositional action. Sometimes it's called karmic formations. You find different translations of this in different books and so on. But it's basically karma, actions that we do under the influence of ignorance, motivated by ignorance. And it's a complete karmic action. So if you've studied karma before, like when talking about the 10 non-virtuous actions, it's said that there are 4 aspects or 4 factors that make an action more or less complete. So one of these is an object. There always has to be an object in relation to which you're doing the action. Like in the case of killing, for example, a person or a being that is killed. That's the first factor. The second factor is your state of mind. You actually have to have the wish to kill. It's not accidental, but you want to kill that person or that being. And it's out of some delusion, either anger or hatred or attachment. Yeah, so one of the delusions is there. And then the third factor is performance, meaning that you actually do it. You don't just think about it and plan it, but then don't do it. You do it. You carry out the action that you've planned to do. And then the fourth factor is the completion of the action. And in the case of killing, that's when the other person or being actually dies. They're not just wounded, but they die. So those are the 4 factors that make an action complete. And so only an action that's complete with all those 4 factors is link number 2. And the significance of this is that it becomes the cause for another rebirth in samsara. So if it's a negative action like killing, then it becomes the cause for a bad rebirth, one of the 3 unfortunate realms. If it's a virtuous action, like you save a life, then it becomes the cause for a good rebirth, one of the fortunate realms. So anyway, it's a complete karmic action motivated by ignorance, and it becomes the cause for a rebirth. And then the third link is called consciousness. And so consciousness is just another term for mind. Consciousness and mind are pretty much the same thing. And mind isn't just one thing that's always the same, but it's like a stream of individual moments of experience. So each moment we have different minds or different consciousnesses arising and passing and arising and passing and so on and so on. So it's like a stream made up of these different moments of consciousness. So the third link of consciousness refers to the moment, the specific moment of consciousness that occurs right after link number 2, and the seed, there's a karmic seed left by link number 2 is planted on the consciousness. So that consciousness, that moment of consciousness, gets kind of implanted with this karmic seed, which has the potential to bring another rebirth. And then that karmic seed will continue to be carried by later moments of consciousness on and on and on into the future until either it gets purified, removed completely, or the right causes and conditions come together and it produces another life, another rebirth. And then the fourth of the links is name and form. Name and form refers to the 5 aggregates, or body and mind in a simple way, at the time of conception of the new rebirth. So here we're going fast forward to the time in the future when that karmic seed, which is link number 2, has become the cause for a new rebirth. So now we're in our new life, our new rebirth. It could be the very next life after this one, but it could also be many lives in the future. But anyway, this is the first moment of that new life, which resulted from that karmic seed that we created, and it's the moment of conception. According to Buddhism, that's the first moment of life. So, like conception, if you're born as a human being, then that first moment of conception, when a child is conceived, that is the beginning of life. And at that time, I mean, it says you have 5 aggregates, body and mind. It's really just a zygote at that point in time, the fertilized egg. But according to Buddhism, mind is there. One's consciousness is already in that fertilized egg, that zygote, and then from there it starts to develop and become a fetus, and then a baby, and then is born and grows up and so on. But anyway, so the body and mind, all 5 aggregates are there from that first moment of conception. That's this 4th link. So it's called name and form. I don't know why, but that's what the terms the Buddha used. And the term name here, it doesn't mean your name like, John or whatever. But it refers to the 4 mental aggregates. So 4 of the 5 aggregates are aspects of the mind. And then form refers to the body, the physical aggregate. So name and form is just a term for the 5 aggregates of body and mind at the time of the start of a new life. And then number 5, next one, is the 6 sources. And this refers to the 6 sense powers of the new rebirth. So as a human being, and many other beings, maybe not all beings, have 6 senses. 5 of these are physical, in the sense like seeing. To be able to see depends on the eye. So there's an eye sense power, visual sense power, that enables us to see. Okay, and then we have an ear sense power enabling us to hear sounds. And then we have a nose sense power to smell, a taste sense power to taste sweet and whatever, a body sense power to feel physical sensations like hot, cold, pain, and so on. Then the 6th sense power is the mind itself. So that has the ability to know all kinds of objects, like memories and dreams and fantasies and thoughts and so on. So the 6 sense powers are like the basis for being able to have those experiences. So like the fetus in the womb, at the first moment of conception, it's just this zygote, just a fertilized egg. So they say at that point in time, the being has 2 of the 6 sense powers. They have the body sense power, because there's a physical, it's just a little blob, a little cell, but that exists. And the mental sense power, because there's consciousness there. And then as the embryo develops, it develops eyes and ears, nose, tongue, and so on, and gradually becomes able to have experiences. Like scientists say that a fetus in the womb, a baby in the womb, can hear sounds at 16 to 20 weeks. I guess they have tests they use to determine that. So hearing starts to happen when, after 16 weeks, that's about 4 months, 4 to 5 months in the womb. And so these develop gradually in the womb of a baby. And then 6, contact. This is the mental factor that brings together the sense, power, object, and consciousness so that an object can be experienced. So having sense powers that are working properly, functioning properly, that means there's the ability, the potential to be able to see, hear, smell, and so forth when we contact objects. So let's say the baby in the womb, maybe the mother is playing Beethoven, she's got music playing. And so the baby is able to hear that. And so it's said that contact, this is a mental factor, and it brings together the object, like the sound of the music, and then the sense power of the baby and the consciousness of the baby, so that the baby is able to hear that sound. So that's already starting in the womb. But then, once we're born, then we can have lots of experiences, seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and so on. So contact is the mental factor that joins those 3 elements that make it possible for us to experience an object. And then number 7 is feeling. So contact leads to feeling. Feeling is also a mental factor, a very important mental factor in the Buddhist tradition. In fact, it's one of the 5 aggregates. One of the 5 aggregates is feelings. And that includes all the different feelings that we have. And there's only 3 types of feelings. It's like our first initial experience of an object. So anytime we see something or hear something or smell, any experience we have, there's always a feeling together with that. And there's only 3 types of feeling: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So if we hear a pleasant sound, something we consider pleasant, then we have a pleasant feeling. If we hear an unpleasant sound, like the sound of a chainsaw, maybe some people would find that pleasant, but it's not. Anyway, that could be an unpleasant sound. So there's an unpleasant feeling. And then neutral feeling, maybe if we're just, looking at a plain wall, then, maybe the feeling is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but it's neutral. So this is a really important mental factor, because in ordinary beings, those who still have delusions, feeling leads, usually, most of the time, leads to one of the delusions. So when we have a pleasant feeling, then it usually leads to attachment. We get attached to that object. We want to keep having that pleasant feeling, so we want to have that object. When we have an unpleasant feeling, it usually leads to aversion, and maybe something stronger than that, like anger, hatred. We want to push away the object, run away from the object, destroy the object. And then neutral feelings lead to ignorance, like a continuation of our ignorance about the actual nature of that object. And that just gets perpetuated. And so then feeling plays an important role in our continued existence in samsara and creating karma and then suffering and so forth. Okay, so then the next of the links is craving. This is number 8. We're up to 8 now. And craving is a kind of attachment that arises from feeling. And there are 3 types. In general, there's 3 types of craving. Attachment that wants to experience more pleasant feelings. So when we have a pleasant feeling, we taste something delicious or we hear a beautiful sound, then we have this craving to want, to have more of that experience and not be separated from it. Then the second is attachment that wants to be separated from unpleasant feelings. So that's also kind of craving, kind of desire. I don't want this, get it away from me, or I want to get away from it. So anything that's unpleasant, painful, then we want to push it away, get rid of it. So that's also a kind of craving. Then the third type of craving is attachment wanting neutral feelings to continue. So neutral feelings are not pleasant nor unpleasant, but they're sort of, comfortable in a way. At least it's not painful. And so, there can be a craving to just continue that kind of neutral feeling. So those are the 3 types of craving. And we have craving all the time during our life, probably every day. But in the 12 links, the link of craving refers just to a moment, an instance of craving that occurs just before death. So just before dying, the end of one life, there'll be some kind of craving. It could be any of these 3 types. It could be wanting pleasure, wanting to be separated from unpleasant things, or neutral. Then the next link, number 9, is grasping. And this is also a kind of attachment, but a stronger form of attachment, a more intense form of attachment. And it comes after craving. So there's, first of all, a craving, like to have a more pleasant experiences or to be separated from unpleasant experiences. And then grasping is a stronger form of that. Grasping it even more strongly. And this, the function of this is that it activates a karmic potential at the time of death. So remember, back at link number 2, we're creating karma, doing actions and creating karma and leaving seeds on our mind. And so just before we die, one of these karmic seeds, we have many karmic seeds, but one of them gets activated by craving and grasping. And so then that karmic seed that gets activated becomes the cause for the next rebirth. So the next link, number 10, is called existence. And it's also sometimes called becoming in some translations. And so this refers to that very karmic seed, which, originally it was created back at the time of link number 2. So motivated by ignorance, we did some action and that left a karmic seed on our mind. And then at the time of death, just before dying, craving and grasping come up. And those are like water that nourish that seed so that it is able to ripen. It's just like when we make sprouts, for example. You've probably all made sprouts. You get seeds, alfalfa seeds or lentils or whatever, and you soak them in water. The water activates the seeds so that they turn into sprouts. So so that's what happens at the time of death. Craving and grasping are like the water that nourish one of our karmic seeds for rebirth, so that it's like ready to ripen and bring the next rebirth, next life. So that's this link here, existence. And then we die. Consciousness, our mind, our consciousness leaves this body, this life, and goes to the next life, depending on that karmic seed that was ripened. So if it was a good, good karma, if it was one of our good karmic seeds, then we might be reborn as a human being or as a deva. But if it was one of the bad karmas that was ripened, then we might be born as an animal or as a hungry ghost or even in hell. It really depends on which karmic seed is ripened at the time of death. So then link number 11 is rebirth, or we could also just call it birth. So so this is the aggregates of the new rebirth, the new life that follows, the last one, previous one. And so the body and mind of the new rebirth. And this is simultaneous with link 4. Link 4 was called name and form, and that referred to the 5 aggregates or body and mind of the new life. So these link 11 and link 4 are actually at the same time, and they might even be the same thing, but just called by different names, but they might be the same thing, I'm not sure. So so the body and mind. So the body, again, at the first moment of life, is just this zygote, fertilized egg. And then the mind, or the consciousness, is the continuation of the mind of the past life, the previous life. And of course, it had many lives before that as well. And so the mind, when it takes place in the womb at the moment of conception, it's not like a blank slate. Like some people in the West have this belief that the mind of a baby, a child, is like a blank slate. They come into the world with nothing in their mind. But according to Buddhism, it's not like that. That mind has all the karmic imprints, karmic seeds, and also seeds of delusions, afflictions, lots of things carried from previous lives. And then those seeds and, all those seeds of karma, seeds of delusions and so on, they will condition the aspects of this new life that you have, the kind of body you have, whether it's, for example, a healthy body or it gets sick a lot, the specific genetic makeup that you will have, the kind of upbringing and experiences you have, and also the tendencies you have, like the personality you have in your life. So all of those are conditioned by the karma, the karmic seeds and tendencies brought from the previous life. So then the final link is number 12, aging and death. So aging starts the second moment after conception. So according to Buddhism, the first moment of a new life is called rebirth. And then from the second moment on, meaning, the zygote, this little fertilized egg, is changing all the time. So from the second moment on, it's already aging. Aging simply means it's changing, getting older, and, eventually, at some time in the future, there will be death. So death is at the end of that life, when the consciousness and the body separate from each other. So aging, continues all through one's life. We usually think of aging as something that happens later, when you're 50s and 60s and 70s. But according to Buddhism, no, it started right after birth. You start aging. So these are the 12 links. This is just a really simple explanation. There's a lot more that could be said, but just to introduce this topic. And the order of the 12 links here isn't exactly the order in which they occur, the sort of chronological order. So last week you were sent a handout about the 12 links, how to meditate on the 12 links. And so within that handout, there was an explanation of how one set of 12 links unfolds. One set of 12 links means, like, under the influence of ignorance, the first link, you create a karma, you do some karmic action. Link number 2, that has the potential to bring a new rebirth, a new life. So how that process unfolds. So it takes at least 2 lifetimes, a complete set of 12 links related to one karmic seed takes at least 2 lifetimes. They could be consecutive, one life after another. Or it could take 3 lifetimes where you create the karma in one lifetime, and then it just gets stored on the mind, and then there's many, 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 many lives. It could be any number of lives, even thousands or millions of lives before that karmic seed is ready to ripen and bring the next life. So I sent that, and we won't go through that now, but you can refer to that and read it, and hopefully it will make sense to you. And next point here is the 12 links divided into 3 groups. So these are like 3 different types of phenomena that the 12 links belong to. One is delusions. Okay, so 3 of the 12 links are delusions. These are, again, mental factors that disturb our mind and lead to suffering. So 3 are delusions. They are ignorance, the first link, and then craving, the 8th link, and grasping, the 9th link. So those 3 of the links are delusions, deluded mental factors. And then 2 of the links are actions, karma. So they are link number 2, compositional action. That's when we do an action, create a karma under the influence of ignorance. And the 12 links only mentions ignorance. It doesn't mention anger, attachment, and so on. But those can also be involved. Okay, so after ignorance, then there could be anger, and that could motivate you to kill. Or it could be attachment that motivates you to steal, and so on. So there could be other delusions that come in as well, motivating the action that you do, which is link number 2. And then existence, link number 10, is also considered an action. It's actually the same karmic seed as link number 2, but it's now ready to bring its result of a new life, a new rebirth. And then the other 7 of the links are results. They're all considered suffering, dukkha, different aspects of dukkha. So the other 7 links are consciousness, number 3, name and form, number 4, 6 sources, number 5, contact, feeling, birth, aging, and death. So those 7 are the results of the delusions and actions. So if we look at the 4 Noble Truths, it says from among the 4 Noble Truths, the 3 delusions and the 2 actions are true origins of suffering. So they are included in the 2nd Noble Truth, the true origins, and the 7 results are true sufferings. Those are true sufferings. So you might wonder, among the 7 suffering results, the first one is consciousness. And you might think, does that mean consciousness is suffering? Yeah, no, not necessarily. Remember, consciousness or mind, there's many, many, many different aspects of our mind. It's changing all the time. And it doesn't mean that all of our minds, all of our consciousnesses are suffering results. Because, for example, the Buddha has mind, the Buddha has consciousness, but the Buddha's mind isn't suffering. So when it says consciousness, the third link, consciousness, is only referring to, again, that moment of consciousness that follows the performance of an action, a complete karmic action that was motivated by ignorance. And then that consciousness gets implanted with that seed. And again, that seed has the potential for causing another rebirth in samsara, another samsaric rebirth. So in that sense, that consciousness is suffering, okay, because it's bound to be born again in samsara. But it doesn't mean every consciousness and consciousness in general is suffering. It's just a specific instance of consciousness. So anyway, that's just a brief look at the 12 links, and I hope you're not totally confused, but I thought it would be good to introduce it. So now, so far in this course, we've spent all of the time looking at the first two noble truths, true sufferings, all the different kinds of unpleasant experiences, unsatisfactory experiences we have in samsara, and then the true origins of suffering, the causes of suffering, which are mainly karma and delusions. If you boil it down to two things, it's karma and delusions. So this explanation of the 12 links is sort of an expanded explanation of the origins of suffering, how karma and delusions keep us stuck in samsara and having to take rebirth again and again and experience all these different sufferings. And the whole purpose of learning about this, meditating on it, is so that we generate renunciation, determination to be free, or it could also be called self-compassion, so that we see we're in a situation that's really unsatisfactory and we shouldn't have to be here. Yeah, there is a way out. We can get out. We can get free. We can get to liberation, freedom, enlightenment. But we have to understand how we're stuck in samsara and how to get ourselves out. So that's the reason for looking at those points. So now let's go on to the third noble truth, which is called true cessations. So there isn't just one true cessation, there's a number of them. And in general, a true cessation is an abandonment of a delusion or a portion of a delusion such that it will never arise again in one's mind. Okay. And then there's the final true cessation, the ultimate big true cessation. This is when all the delusions and their seeds have been completely eliminated, and again, they'll never come back. And this is nirvana, complete liberation from all suffering and its causes forever. So it's a little hard to understand true cessation. It's kind of abstract. So it might be helpful to think of an analogy, a simple analogy. Let's say you have an illness that causes you a lot of discomfort, a lot of suffering, a lot of hardship. You go to your doctor and your doctor prescribes medicine. You take the medicine for a while, and then after some time, the disease is cured. So when that happens, you experience the absence of that disease and the suffering that it causes, the cessation, okay? the cessation of the disease that you had and the discomfort, the suffering that you experienced as a result of that disease. So that's a little bit like a true cessation. And then the medicine that brought you to that state is like the fourth truth, the true paths, which we'll look at next. Okay, so we have within our mind delusions, afflictive mental states like anger, attachment, jealousy, and ignorance. The big one is ignorance. So those are in our mind, and as long as they are in our mind, we will create karma and we will experience suffering, problems, difficulties again and again and again. So if we want to be free once and for all, like cured of all these problems, we need to get rid of the delusions. They're like the disease that's making us suffer. So we have to get rid of those. But we can't just do it like that, like in one moment. We can't get rid of all the delusions. It's a gradual process. And the main medicine that cures this disease that we have is the wisdom realizing emptiness. The wisdom directly realizing emptiness, which we'll look at next. So we need to develop that, and that takes study, reflection, meditation. Gradually, our mind gets more and more able to understand emptiness, and eventually gets to the point where we see emptiness directly. We have the direct realization of emptiness. Our mind is directly seeing emptiness. So that's a really powerful state of mind, and it's that mind that is able to eliminate all the delusions and their seeds, but again, not all at once, but gradually, kind of in layers. And so each time we are able to eliminate some layer, some portion of the delusions, that is what's called a true cessation. So it's the cessation of a portion of a delusion such that it won't come back. It'll never arise again. So we keep doing that, gaining more and more true cessations until finally all the delusions and their seeds have been completely eliminated. And that's the final true cessation, which is called Nirvana. That's the complete liberation from all suffering and its causes. So then the fourth truth is true paths. And so path, the word path, we talk about path in Buddhism. A path is actually a mental state. It's a state of mind. It's a realization. So it's not just any state of mind, but it's a very special state of mind that has a realization, some kind of realization of truth or reality. And so for those who hear about nirvana, enlightenment, and want to attain it, this is how to do it. This is the way to get there. And there are numerous paths, but the main one, the main true path, is what I just mentioned, the wisdom that directly realizes emptiness. So that's the main one, because that is the main, like the medicine that cures our suffering, gets rid of the disease. But a true path could be another realization, another state of mind, another realization that is sort of influenced by or conjoined by that direct realization. For example, a bodhisattva, while a bodhisattva is on the way to enlightenment, they develop many different realizations. One of the first ones is bodhicitta. So when your aspiration to become a Buddha becomes uncontrived, natural, spontaneous, then that's called uncontrived bodhicitta. And that's the first point that you are actually a bodhisattva from that time on. And then later you develop the direct realization of emptiness. And you still have bodhicitta, of course. So bodhicitta is in your mind. So when your bodhicitta is together with the direct realization of emptiness, they sort of influence each other, or affect each other, support each other. So then that bodhicitta also becomes a true path. That's a little complicated. That's more a philosophical thing. But anyway, the point is the path is a realization that enables you to get to your goal, to your destination of enlightenment. So, so the actual way, the way of explaining the path, there's different ways of explaining the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. And this is a simple way in terms of 3 higher trainings, 3 main practices we need to develop. The first is ethics. Ethics is basically refraining from non-virtue and creating virtue. So you start with the 10 non-virtuous actions, you learn about those, and you try to refrain from those, to stop killing, stealing, and so forth. And then when you're on the Buddhist path, you might also want to take precepts, like for lay people, there's the 5 precepts, and then some take monastic precepts. So there's different precepts or vows that you take to really make firm your commitment to refraining from non-virtue and creating virtue. So those 2 things are actually the same. When you refrain from non-virtue, you're automatically creating virtue. You refrain from killing, you make this conscious decision, I'm not going to kill anymore, and you really live that way, you avoid killing. So just by doing that, you are creating virtue. That's a virtuous action. But there's also other ways to create virtue, like practicing generosity, giving material things, giving your time to help people, giving dharma, teaching dharma, and so on. So there's many ways to create virtue, but those, basically that's what ethics is all about. And then the second of the 3 higher trainings is concentration. And that means training the mind to stay single-pointedly focused on a chosen object of meditation. So you could use the breath, you could use an image of the Buddha, and so on. But in the beginning, you can only stay on the object for a few seconds, and then gradually with more practice, you can stay for several minutes, and then eventually, if you really keep working at this, you can stay on the same object for hours and attain calm abiding, a very peaceful state of concentration. The third higher training is wisdom. In general, wisdom means understanding things correctly as they are. So there can be different kinds of wisdom that understands different things, but the main wisdom we need to develop is the direct realization of emptiness, the true nature of all things, because this is the actual antidote to ignorance and the other delusions that keep us imprisoned in samsara. So as I mentioned already, that to develop that kind of wisdom, we need to study, we need to listen to teachings, read, study, discuss, ask questions, meditate. So it's kind of a long process to develop an intellectual understanding of emptiness. Then when you do have an intellectual understanding, you need to meditate on it with concentration. You need to have strong concentration to focus on emptiness. And in that way, eventually you'll develop the direct realization of emptiness. And then you have that key to overcome the delusions. And so these three are connected. The wisdom is really the most important one, because that's the thing that will eliminate ignorance. But it's not easy to cultivate wisdom. It's very difficult. And one of the reasons it's not easy is because our mind is very scattered, very distracted. It's difficult to stay focused. So to develop the wisdom, especially the direct realization of emptiness, we need to keep our mind focused, concentrated for long periods of time, so that we can penetrate the misconceptions, misperceptions that we have, that we're sort of addicted to, kind of cut through those and see things as they are. And so to really develop that kind of wisdom, we need concentration. We need to develop concentration. And so it's similar, like when we're in school. We've all had that experience of being in school and you have an exam coming up and you really want to make sure you pass this exam. So, you have to really focus on what you're studying and just shut out everything else. Otherwise, you won't be able to study properly. But then concentration is also difficult, because our mind, our normal state of mind, is very scattered. We can't stay on one object for more than a few seconds. It's always bouncing around from one thing to another. And one reason our mind is so scattered is because of the way we behave in our daily life. So in our daily life, we often get caught up in attachment and anger, irritation, jealousy, and then get all kind of, disturbed by these afflictions, these delusions, and then we act them out. And then, because we don't control our mind during our daily life, and we sometimes, get afflicted and then do non-virtuous actions, then when we sit down and meditate, we can't expect that our mind is going to be completely calm and clear and concentrated, because we'll probably be thinking about all the things that we did and disturbed about them and so on, maybe still angry, still attached, and so on. And so that's why we need ethics as the basis. So we need to learn how to live our life in an ethical way, in, avoiding delusions, avoiding non-virtuous actions, harmful actions, and so on. So the more we can live like that in our daily life, the easier it will be to concentrate when we're practicing meditation. And then when we have better concentration, we'll be able to develop wisdom. So these three are sort of they depend on each other. They build on each other. But that doesn't mean that you have to have, fully accomplished one before you go on to the next. We can work on all of them simultaneously. So we can work on ethics, and we can also work on concentration, and we can work on developing wisdom. So this is one way of explaining the path that leads to, usually this way of explaining the path is the path to nirvana, to liberation from samsara. But in the Pali tradition, some of you may have had experience, in the Pali tradition, they usually explain the Eightfold Path, which the Buddha taught in his first teaching. And it's not really different. The Eightfold Path is just sort of an expansion of these three higher trainings. So we could also condense the 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path into these 3. So it's not really like completely different. And then for the Bodhisattva path, which I think in the next module 10 of this course, you'll start learning about the path to Buddhahood, the path to enlightenment. So there's some differences. I mean, the path to Buddhahood also requires cultivating ethics and concentration and wisdom, but other things as well, generosity, patience, and so on. So it is important to know these three because they do need to be practiced, whether you want to attain nirvana, liberation from suffering for yourself, or you want to attain Buddhahood, becoming fully enlightened to benefit all living beings. These three are essential. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of these topics, and there's a list down. If you scroll down, there's a couple of books if you want to read more about these topics, about Samsara, Nirvana, Four Noble Truths, 12 Links, and so on. So these are just a few books that you can get more information about those. So I think Tyler will send this this file to you afterwards. So we have some time left if anyone would like to ask a question.
No one else has a question. Is it okay? Right? Oh, I think Robin.
Hi, Bay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question related to the type of progress for the wisdom practice. Because you talk about how it requires the concentration to penetrate the wisdom, the understanding of emptiness. And are there stages in terms of like how one knows where they fall? Because it seems for say, for example, I'm looking at in concentration, usually there are like 9 stages of calm abiding. But for the wisdom, are there something like that where there's like signposts? I hope that question is clear.
Yeah, no, it's just that I hadn't heard that question before. It's an interesting question.
It just came out of my mind. Sorry, it was
Yeah,
not quite prepared.
well, I mean, there are so according to my understanding, we have to first receive teachings, listen to teachings that explain emptiness, and we have to, study those teachings, discuss with our fellow students and our teachers, think about them, and gradually come to a good understanding of emptiness. And that's something that's not easy. It takes time because emptiness is quite a difficult subject. And they say that the first initial actual realization of emptiness that one has is an inferential realization, meaning you have to use a reason. You have to use one of these different reasonings that you can use, such as dependent arising. That's one of the reasonings. And so you learn the reasoning process and you meditate on it. And at some point, if it works well, you'll actually get an inferential realization. So an inferential realization means it's conceptual and it arises from a reasoning, from some kind of reasoning. For example, the I doesn't exist inherently because it's dependent. Okay, but you have to go through kind of quite a few steps to make that an actual experience. And it's probably best, I mean, people sometimes think that they've gained a realization of emptiness when they haven't. So it's good to have a teacher you can go to and talk about your experience, and the teacher can confirm if you really did have a realization or not. So that's quite important. And then once you've had the inferential realization, you need to continue meditating. And you also need to develop calm abiding so that you can bring those two together, the inferential realization and your calm abiding. And eventually you're able to gain what's called the union of calm abiding and special insight. And that, again, is not an easy thing to do. It's difficult. That's still not yet a direct realization of emptiness. You can have to continue meditating more and more and more. And eventually it turns into a direct realization of emptiness. So actually in Jeffrey Hopkins' book, Meditation on Emptiness, if you have that book, in the beginning, close to the beginning of the book, he actually explains this process. He explains how to develop calm abiding and also how to develop an understanding of emptiness and how to bring those two together so that you have, the special insight into emptiness. So that's probably the best resource for understanding those steps. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to know who's realized emptiness. It's not something people kind of go around talking about. I mean, even His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, recently, in the recent years, when he's been teaching, he's been saying that, I think what does he say? I think he said he's attained the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation is when you have uncontrived bodhicitta. But he says he hasn't yet attained the path of preparation, the second path, because he hasn't yet developed calm abiding. So he does have a realization of emptiness, but he hasn't yet, put those two together, the calm abiding and the realization of emptiness, which produces special insight. So even His Holiness, I mean, I'm sure the Tibetans would say, oh, he's just saying that. It's not true. He's already a Buddha. But, according to him, he's saying, even His Holiness hasn't yet reached that level. So it's kind of just an indication of how difficult it is. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Robin, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm my understanding of the 12 stages. I did the readings. The complete karmic action motivated by ignorance creates a moment of consciousness, which then has the seed champa in it.
It doesn't really
And
create that moment of consciousness. I don't.
okay, so the moment of consciousness is already there, and then it
Yeah,
attaches to that
and then the
moment,
seed sort of gets planted into it. The moment of
planted into that
consciousness is
moment.
kind of like the ground that the seed falls in.
Okay.
Yeah. But in a way, you could say it is created because, yeah, if it hadn't been for the previous moment where you created that karmic seed, you wouldn't have the next
Wouldn't
moment
have the
of
next moment of
consciousness with that karmic
consciousness.
seed. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was questioning that. And then in specific, individual moments of consciousness are passing all the time, and some have seeds and some don't. And so, for example, if I'm watching television and I see a mosquito on the screen and I go up and I kill the mosquito because I don't want to get a mosquito bite, rather than capturing it and releasing it, then I have to become aware of that and immediately say, oh, I let my momentary need for my own comfort eclipse my desire for the mosquito to live. And then when I do that, have I interrupted that moment? Or should I also confess that at the close of day when I'm saying my prayers? Like, I'm sort of thinking a lot about when I do make mistakes, how do I acknowledge them in a way that is befitting of the level of the seed, or if there is a level of a seed, I guess is what I'm asking. Does that make sense?
Well, it's something I don't fully understand. I haven't, yeah, I mean, when they explain the 12 links, they explained it in this way that the third link, consciousness, is the moment of mind that receives that seed, that karmic seed. And that moment of consciousness is arose from a previous moment of consciousness. But then I don't know if that moment of consciousness is something distinct from, say, like, we have this stream of these moments of consciousness going through time, and they're carrying all these karmic seeds from the past as well. So it's not clear. I suppose I should try to ask a teacher one day, but how, is that moment of consciousness distinct from another moment of consciousness carrying another karmic seed? It's not very clear. Probably one of the best resources for more information about the 12 links is this book, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. It's volume 3 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion by the Dalai Lama and Thupten Chodron. And that has a really, really thorough explanation of the 12 links. In fact, it's almost like overwhelming. There's so much information in there. But you might find an answer to that in that book.
I did look at the other
about,
one.
Sorry?
Oh, no, I was saying that I've been reading the other book that was suggested from the reading the excerpt on meditation, how to meditate on the stages, and that's been very helpful.
Okay, yeah, that's still kind of a simplified.
It's basic, but it's been helpful.
But if you want a more complicated explanation, then Samsara, Nirvana, Buddha Nature is helpful. But still, yeah, I mean, we still need to confess and purify anytime we do a negative action. But to actually, at our level, when we do purification, when we confess killing a mosquito or whatever, we can't completely eliminate the karmic seed. It's only the direct realization of emptiness that's able to wipe out those karmic seeds so that they are totally gone from the mind. So what we can do when we purify is reduce the potential of the karmic seed so that it won't bring the full result. There's different ways that karma can be purified by using the 4 opponent powers, but we have to at least try and do the best we can to purify. But yeah, to totally get rid of those karmic seeds, we need to realize emptiness.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're almost out of time, but on the 18th, there is a practice day. I think Tyler will send more information about that, but yeah, it'll be on Zoom like what we're doing now, 10:30 to 1:30 in the morning. It's a Sunday. So there'll be some guided meditations. I'll lead some meditations on what we've been learning. And then the last part will be a chance to have discussion, question and answer, and then make one last final meditation and dedication of merit. So yeah, if you do have questions that didn't get answered tonight, then you'll have a chance then to do it. So there's been a lot of information in this class. It's really meant to be just more of an introduction to these topics, but hopefully if your appetite is stimulated, you want to learn more, then there are other courses where you can go on, like the basic program. There you go into topics like this in more detail and get much more understanding of them. So the Discovering Buddhism program is more just like, just learning something about the path to enlightenment, but not going into great depth with the whole thing. Just to give you some idea of where you can go from here to enlightenment. Okay, so let's close with the dedication prayers, dedicating the merit, positive energy. Okay, so remember the motivation we had at the beginning, wanting to benefit others with our learning and our practicing of the Dharma. So think of the merit we created here tonight, coming together, looking at this very important subject, trying to understand it to the best of our ability. So we definitely created merit, positive energy, which is the cause of happiness and spiritual growth. So let's share this merit with others, with all other beings, wishing them to be happy, free of suffering, and reach enlightenment. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Patient in bearing the hardships of spreading the teachings of the Muni in general and the teachings of the victorious Jamgun in hundreds of directions, Lord of Dharma, holding the 3 vows and wearing saffron robes, please quickly return as the glory of the peerless teachings.